How's it going, everybody? Today I'm here with Jamie, and we're going to talk about some improvised but interesting subjects. But first, we're going to go ahead and roll the intro. All right, welcome, Jamie. Sorry for the long pause there. I had to have the wonderful intro come in for us.
That's fine.
So we've essentially, this is the first time, of course, I guess 15 minutes ago was the first time we've actually talked in voice, but we've had quite a few internet conversations, we'll call them.
Internet discussions, yeah.
Yep. And I guess I know some things about you, but just kind of like give a quick synopsis of who you are, and just kind of we'll start from there.
Okay, so you want me to start with a quick synopsis of who I am and whatever?
Sure.
Okay, so I'm Canadian. I've not regionally locked, so I grew up in Central Canada, then I moved to Western Canada, then I moved to Central Canada, then I moved to Western Canada, then I moved to Eastern Canada. So I've been all over the place. Haven't done a whole lot of international travel. I'm the liberal, like really, when you get down to the nitty gritty of it, I'm a liberal. But unfortunately, in Canada today, to be a liberal who holds liberal principles, you're a conservative now, which is weird, but it's one of those things. I haven't changed politically. I'm homeless right now, so that's interesting, and so that carries all the bags with it, and so that's where I am.
Okay, so I guess the one thing that I'll say, and maybe just a question to get started, is being a Canadian and being I guess, attached.
Well, Canadian liberals and Canadian conservatives are really different from what exists in your political climate in the United States. So
I guess
the Overton window has shifted a lot. Like, it's the Progressive Conservative Party has like pride flags on their logos and stuff. It's not something you might see with the Republicans.
So you're saying that your entire political system is far more shifted left than what we are? Oh,
yes.
Okay.
At least in my opinion.
Okay. And I don't know enough about it to, I guess, have an opinion. I just know, typical American. I just know what the American side is, and maybe a little bit about Germany. I've been kind of trying to pay attention to their white supremacy problem there. But so being a Canadian, what is your opinion about, I guess, the United States politics? Like, what's your take on
it? It's interesting. See, I kind of went from I was a leftist in my youth, and then I went kind of into the more anarchisty stuff. But those guys scared me, and they were talking about hurting people, and so I went away from that.
Sure.
And then I'm kind of a milk toast conservative, I guess. And so, what am I going to say there? Your initial question was again?
Oh, just what is your opinion about United States politics? Having been a Canadian for
Canadian and American politics are Canadian politics is a lot slower, and so it's one of those things where it's more centrist, I think, maybe, and it wasn't as combative initially. But as time went on, and certain tactics, even from like what's his name? Oh, the guy worked for Reagan that died of brain cancer. But tactics like that went on. They didn't really filter here until later on. So now we're seeing the sort of identity politics and stuff that's rolled out in your politics and went crazy,
Right.
is coming here. You know, the same thing with Britain, even France.
So,
Yeah.
talking about that, do you, talking about the, I guess, identity politics specifically, um, I assume that you've, I guess, paid attention to in some degree Jordan Peterson, because he's kind of mainly on that subject.
Oh yeah, no, I have one of his books, but he's not the only one that's talked about it. It's Jonathan Haidt, it's James Lindsay, and Peter Boghossian, uh, and Helen Pluckrose. They ran a whole scam on it. Got a whole bunch of journals passed and stuff, which is interesting. So yeah, no, I've actually paid a lot of attention to it, but it was only because I play a lot of video games, and I was just playing video games one day, and all of a sudden, everyone said I was a monster. And I was like, what is this about? And so that's probably one of the reasons why I actually started paying attention.
Oh, was that something to do with Gamergate or something? Like, how would you be a monster for playing
Oh
video
yeah, no,
games?
well it was one of those things where yeah, no, it was way back to Gamergate. And also I actually was helping administrate a couple of fairly left-wing pages on the internet and stuff like that, and I did a lot of skateboarding. And it was another red pill for me was that I did all this skateboarding, and I met a lot of cops because you get the cops calling you all the time when you're out skateboarding.
Really?
And a few of them are dicks, like straight up fucking dicks. And a few of the other guys, if you're just nice to them and you're just like, yeah, okay, you busted me, blah blah blah, and you were honest with them, you didn't do anything shady, they just let you walk off or whatever. And so a lot of them are cool. So it kind of got down to the point where you have enough experience with a certain type of trade or whatever, and so it's yeah, you know what I mean. Like it got a lot easier for me to deal with them, and
Sure.
other stuff like that. So that kind of when I started expressing those sorts of views in those sorts of groups, people were like, "Oh my God, you're a monster," and blah blah blah, and pigs and it was like, well, no, I've met a lot of those guys. Like I don't know, maybe they haven't had as much experience with the police as I have, or at least on the level where that you're just a nuisance. So
Yeah, and I've never had any problems whatsoever with the police. I mean, I think I've only ever got a speeding ticket, and it actually went away and isn't even on my record anymore. So, but the thing that I guess
uh,
my problem specifically in America, and this goes to
excessive
just
force.
yeah, I'm just saying, like, why do we have to have this like absurd response? Like, it's dead serious. The other day I saw, and I'm having a brain fart as to what state it was in. And it doesn't matter. I mean, this could have happened in Switzerland, and I would say the same thing. It's like this lady, she went to a Walmart, which, I mean, I don't think Switzerland even has Walmart, by the way. But so she went to this.
Switzerland might have Walmart.
They're too rich for that. But you're right. They probably have one, but I'm serious. That whole, I went there on a work trip, and it was beautiful. I loved every second of it. But anyway, getting back to the point is this lady, she's had dementia, which of course the police officer doesn't know, and that's fair. I mean, I don't know if somebody has dementia just by looking at them or even talking to them. But point being is she shoplifted from a Walmart, and I think the total amount that she shoplifted was like $12.80. I think that the articles I think it was 70. She was 70 something.
No.
And anyhow, so this police officer, she was walking in the grass next to next to a street, and of course being kind of a little bit belligerent. So I mean, that's fair. Hey, you need to stop, ma'am, or whatever. And eventually she just said, no, I'm not, going to stop. I'm going. And he had to literally wrestle her to the ground, and ended up, dislocating her shoulder, I think, and maybe a broken arm or something like that. I mean, there was some not life-threatening, but serious injuries that happened to this lady. And it's like, guys, I just don't understand why they couldn't have just followed her wherever she's going, And I don't understand why it was necessary. They had to wrestle her to the ground for $12.81. That's just absurd. It makes no sense to me. I mean, in my mind, and this is coarse opinion, I mean, I know that the laws technically they're following what the laws are telling them, but the point is that why do we feel the
There
need in
should
the
be some
United
fucking discretion
States?
in use of
Well,
force.
yeah. I mean, I'm just saying, why do we feel in the United
Holy
States
shit, man.
that we have to get to the point of that whole scenario when it's like, dude, who gives a shit about the $12.81? If I thought as a citizen, it was like I can prevent some lady from getting her shoulder dislocated and her arm broken or something, is like for $12.81, as a stranger, I would just pull that out of my pocket and just say, officer, go the fuck away, dude. Like, why are we even bothering with this? But I
Well,
mean,
it's not even that. It's they could have de-escalated the situation, and just let her do her thing, or yeah, just even let it go, right? But you don't want to encourage petty theft, but you also have to, like if she had dementia and all that other stuff, and she's wandering around, then maybe, I don't know, they would have dealt with it differently up here, and maybe I'm not trying to virtue signal about Canada or any of that horse shit, but if you have mental issues here and you're causing trouble, maybe it's because of our socialized health system, but they'll take you for for a tour somewhere nice. Some doctors will talk to you and try to get you sorted out, or maybe even put you in some sort of socialized housing, or the system here isn't perfect. Like when I was in the shelter system, there were some people in there that was fucked. But there's at least, but maybe they do that there. I don't know. It's people fall through the tracks. It's
yeah,
yeah,
I mean,
but
I don't think, and I don't honestly
assaulting a little old
know.
lady,
Well,
like fuck me, man.
yeah, I'm talking about like the shelter system is not great. I mean,
Oh well,
in
it's
the U.S.
the best example of what may have happened to your shelter systems there, and what happened to the shelter systems in some places here is that they cut back on mental health funding, so they
Yeah,
shut down sanitariums and other places like that where they actually would house people with mental illness, right?
sure.
It wasn't a greatest system, like admittedly, like you get into sanitariums back in the 19th century, and it's a horror show.
Yeah, it's bad.
But oh yeah, but there was at least that impetus to take care of the mentally ill, and now Alberta was the best example of that. And yeah, I might be conservative, but they did what Ralph Klein did was he shut down all of the mental health facilities, a lot of these sanitariums and places that took care of people, and just because these people weren't competent enough to take care of themselves, they just ended up on the streets. And because of the sorts of things that are on the streets, a lot of them end up alcohol, drugs,
Yeah, and that's it's a similar concept to like legalizing all drugs. Is that you're not trying, like a lot of people, like for the housing situation and also the legalizing drug situation in the United States, from what I get from a lot of my conservative, I guess, citizens that I share this space with, is that they're like, oh, we're just promoting people to get handouts, which is making society weaker, and I get, in a way, like I can wrap my mind around where they're coming from, even though I disagree with it. But it's like, guys, where's the evidence for this? You have to prove that this is what is actually happening. And if you look at the evidence, it's like what you're saying. Yeah, you may not have like the most perfect system over in Canada, but it's far better than what we have, and it's already a working example of how eliminating out as much poverty and suffering as possible is going to have just a inherent good effect on the society in which you live. And it's not necessarily like giving handouts or whatever. It's like guys, you're spending more money in taxes by not giving those quote unquote handouts. The less you spend here, the more you're going to spend somewhere else, is I guess what I'm getting at.
Well, okay, I don't completely agree with that statement, but there are highlights. Like, I don't know if you've, fuck this. It's quite a few years ago that I was reading all about this stuff, but if you look up Million Dollar Manny, he was a guy in a city in the United States who was, he had issues and he was, outside of the social system. And because he was such a rampant alcoholic and God knows what, God knows if he's only alive today, and this is maybe a decade ago that I was reading this. And instead of housing him or taking care of him from a mental health perspective, they just let him loose on the streets and let him do his own thing. And because alcohol was so cheap there, although begging, they'll probably get the money for it anyway.
Yeah.
He ended up costing the city $1 million in a year. And he wasn't the only case of this, where there's these people that basically they're plants, and if you were to take care of them, they would be kind of okay, or at least they would sit in one spot, and you just, like plants, like water them. And I've heard this from mental health professionals too. There's just people on the streets who are just plants, and you just water them, you take care of them. That's all you can really do for them. I know it sounds horrible, but
Yeah.
but yeah, so that there's that thing where, well, you can either pay the money to take care of people who have issues, and at least try to rehabilitate those you can reintegrate into society, or you can allow for just mayhem. And mayhem, it compounds itself, and because you have this community that's already fucked, it'll suck other people from other communities into it. And so it's, yeah, it makes sense to really, if you take the band-aid off of it and try to actually fix the problems associated with it, you'll probably end up with greater returns in the long run.
Yeah, and I mean, so the
That makes
thing,
sense.
the thing that I think we pretty much just all agreed there, but the thing that I feel like the conservative standpoint in the U.S. is, and I've heard it a number of times, is like, oh, well, you're just coddling weak people, and I think that that's just a really bad mindset to have, just in general, because a lot of these people are working
Well, you have to
jobs.
provide opportunity.
Oh, I'm just saying a lot of the people are working jobs, and some of them are working 2 and 3 jobs. So it's not that they're
Yeah,
just
but you
sitting
don't have to
around
work
being
2 or 3
lazy.
jobs. This is sorry to cut you off, man, but this is one of the most important things that I've seen in your country and as well as mine, is that we have devalued trades work. And for a lot of people in communities that are disenfranchised, like I saw a statistic the other day that said that your country alone needed something like 10,000 heavy duty mechanics in the next decade. And this was a little while ago. And so it's not that the opportunity isn't there, it's just the education isn't there. And I don't see, it was just like when I was in the shelter system, where there were people in there who didn't know how to make resumes and stuff like that. And I'm not saying that disenfranchised people in disenfranchised communities aren't capable of doing things, but I don't think the opportunities are presented to them to do that. And you can send all those guys to trade school. You can either have a bunch of people kicking around doing nothing, or you can send them all to fucking trade school. And in 10 years, a lot of them are going to be making good fucking money and paying taxes.
Yeah, and I can agree with all that. Is that, yes, the trades aren't valued as much as they used to be, but I do think also that a lot of our countries are advancing technologically enough that the kind of middle class is shifting. And I think that it's
Yeah,
not necessarily,
have you seen much on that?
well, I
There's
mean,
the stuff that I saw. It was well, okay, so AI is going to kill all your middle jobs. So it's going to kill your accountants. It might kill a lot of accountancy. It might kill a lot of you know middle management jobs, stuff like that. Various other things. They were saying maybe cooking food, but I don't know. Machines don't cook food as good as people mostly. And so you have all these little things that it is going to eliminate. But trades work, the thing is, you still need somebody to build a house, and you still need an electrician, you still need a technician, you still need all that stuff. And those jobs will be eliminated eventually, but automation is might not jump those leaps and bounds our lifetime, at least.
So one thing that I'll say on that is that we already have working examples of automated systems that are able to build at least the framing of a house. And also, I would say you could even probably now this isn't going to in the consumer realm yet, but they do have paint on circuits that essentially what they're doing to protect people on that. You can run even 120 volts. I don't know about, I guess if you can run two parallel circuits, but point being is they have literally a paint in which you could paint on your circuits and all that.
On that.
And I'm just saying that if it becomes that case, then we don't really need to worry about this, medium, which is, like Romex or whatever, the standard, I don't know what it is in Canada, but, size 12 or in older places like size 14 Romex is typically what we're wiring all of our stuff up. Are you 220 up there? Is your 230 or whatever power up there? Or is it 120?
We're an odd place, but okay. So the only way I can really figure out how okay, so we're on the same kind of grid as New York City and stuff like that. I don't know if you remember. You might not have been a part of the Great Blackout in like 2000. It was sometime between 2000 and 2007, but there was a great blackout in the Greater Toronto area, and it extended out to most of the East Coast. And so we're on the same power grid basically as them. And Quebec was fine because they're DC. I'm not sure if Quebec is La Belle Provence. It's the Quebec. It's the French part of Canada. Although there's French people everywhere, but they're mostly there.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I didn't know anything about that because I grew up primarily over in Illinois, which is kind of central. So, but I think we're in a different grid.
The East Coast.
But yeah, I think that.
So probably 220 or whatever would be standardized American if it's standard.
So yeah, that'd be 120. Yeah, it would be 120. Yeah. And then we usually like larger appliances will run
220.
Yeah. But anyhow.
Yeah, great big plugs. We have that here.
Sure. So I guess getting back to the automation and removing jobs is I definitely agree with that. I actually, worked in automation, and I guess technically my job also is in automation, but I'm not like, I don't have as big of a role in the innovation part in my current job as I did before. But point being is we're talking 15 years, 20 years maximum for a lot of jobs. Sure, the trades will probably still have a pretty large presence, but I do think even some of the trades jobs will be using automation in conjunction to their job.
Greater automation.
Yeah, like it'll be them operating automated methods of doing their job as opposed to doing the handwork.
You too. It's actually interesting you said that because they've almost automated. When I was out west, they were building houses and buildings like crazy, and that was why I was into the concrete industry until I developed a severe allergy. But houses were like we would do the foundations and then the flat work there. I did mostly flat work, and then they just came in kits. And the carpenters weren't really figuring out any of the dimensions or anything anymore. It was just, it was sold like a kit car or a kit anything, right?
Yeah.
So you just have to have the space to do it, and then you just get sent the kit. So it was already, it was done by hand still in special places, but it was almost automated. And as soon as somebody figures out how to get machines to do that, then you're just going to have kits where you build houses with. Right, until they figure out how to make machines to do that too. So I agree with you, but I think it's a little while down the road. So
I think that the main problem that we're seeing is that a lot of jobs are going to go away, and then I mean, we then have to look and say, oh, wait a minute, we're a capitalistic society. How are we going to survive? Like how is this economy going to keep going if people don't have jobs? Quite, specifically. And that's a good question. I don't know that I
Oh,
have
you
the
still have
answer.
cooking and cleaning and all these other jobs. Well, but and yeah, those might go away too, eh? Huh.
I mean, right
Well,
now we are.
scarcity. I don't know. The biggest worry I'd have would be, and I know some people say they're discredited, and some other guys have talked about them, but those mouse utopia experiments way back when, where the what do they call it, a behavioral sink. So people need adversity, so they have to keep looking forward, and there is already been a drop in birth rates in North America. Well, even I saw an article today, and it said that China's birth rate is stabilized. So they're almost reached where the people reach a certain amount of wealth and they stop having 10 kids, and
Sure.
then cosmic dice are rolled and there's less people. So I think as society modernizes and moves forward, there's going to be less people on Earth to begin with anyway. So it might equalize itself out. At least I'm hoping.
Well, from what I've read, and by no means am I an expert on, the population in many respects,
Oh,
but
me neither.
the thing that I read is that they're estimating that we're essentially going to cap out at 9 billion. Anything more than that, I think, is unlikely because of the societal factors that you're talking about. Is like when you get richer or you're more wealthy.
Look at COVID.
Yeah.
Like some of the countries that have been worst effective are the most heavily populated, and
Yeah.
let's face it, we're animals. We share a lot of DNA with trees. So if you look at other animal populations, as soon as you have too many animals in a small space, it's just if anything gets loose in there, you're fucked.
Yeah.
So it's I think Mother Nature. It's unfortunately we're still biological animals. It's yeah, 9 billion, yeah, and you get too dense, and bad things start happening, and pollution, and But I think it's gonna level itself out by itself, and just by modernization.
Yeah. And I think that, was it Epicurus? Maybe he was right. I think Epicurus was the one. I'm looking it up right now, where he said that yeah, I think it is. So he's saying the elimination of fears and corresponding desires. Oh, okay. I think essentially what he was saying is that when people move together, yeah, this may not be Epicurus, but anyway, there was a philosopher that I was thinking of, is that he essentially said the worst thing that mankind has ever done is move together and form cities, because probably from his perspective, he's seeing kind of what we're seeing too, is like the most populated areas are the ones that are hardest hit by these pandemics, in which, up until, the past 100 years or so, we haven't had any defense against.
Yeah.
But
Well, I think it was the late 17th century where they actually started experimenting with vaccinations, smallpox, like that. I think
okay.
it was, or in mid 18th century. God damn it, you read a lot of shit, eh?
Yeah.
It's one of those things.
Sure.
But
So
yeah, so yeah, you're right about that. But it's one of those things too where a lot of that knowledge was lost. Like it's not like the ancients, or at least Rome, was a modern society by any stretch of the imagination, but
no.
you just look at the depth that was in there between the time when Rome fell and then the rest of us. It's like they had running toilets, they knew about sanitation. There's even evidence that they were doing the surgical procedures, amputations and stuff like that, which have been impossible 500 years later. And then even you look even further back, the Egyptians were brewing beer which unintentionally contained tetracycline, which was a antibiotic.
Yeah,
So it's,
it's
there's the health, human health has been around for a while, and people have known that, that filth and X and Y and Z were bad things. It's just, it's only, yeah, maybe in the past 150 years where people actually knew that it was germs. But
sure.
filth is a good indicator of what you shouldn't do if you want to be healthy.
Right. And it's harder to achieve that if you're closely packed.
Oh yeah,
It's
definitely.
1860 was the germ theory of disease. I think. Let me see.
It's stood the test of time. It's been altered, but it's still kind of,
Sure.
on there.
But so I guess moving on a little bit, what are your biggest concerns about just the world right now from your perspective where you're sitting? Like what are the kind of big problems that are posed by the world at the moment that have you probably the most worried?
In my country, uh, we had a conservative leader, Stephen Harper. He was around for a bit, and the media said a lot of bad things about him that may or may not have been true, but he was a politician. And then so Justin Trudeau got elected. He did legalize marijuana, which was great because he got a lot of people from getting thrown in jail for nothing. And
Yeah.
there's a bunch of other stuff that he did that wasn't so bad. But as the years went on, it's gotten increasingly authoritarian, and it's now even to the point where they have a bill which basically we have a thing called the CRTC, right, and it regulates television and whatever programming here. It's like the FCC, but it's a little more, on top of everything.
Yeah.
And we're supposed to see a certain amount of Canadian programming, a certain amount of this, a certain amount of that, and that's regulated by the government. And so it was kind of, they had their own walled garden, and unfortunately, because a lot of it was these artsy fartsy guys, nobody's watching it anymore. And so everybody's watching American content, European content, all this other stuff, and they were all of a sudden they're like, oh well, we have to change that, or at least get ourselves more money to make shitty content that nobody watches. But they also wrote inside the bill that they also want to control what Canadians see on the internet, like, so individuals. So I can't see certain things anymore that the government deems I shouldn't see, and they even down to the point where they want to make it illegal for me to say things they don't want me to say on the internet. And
Yeah, Peterson's
it's
pretty
not,
strong opinioned on that.
yeah, but this isn't just pronouns. This is everything.
So they're essentially doing true
It,
speak.
it's everything on the internet will be regulated by the CRTC. And but Facebook and all these other platforms, like if we were to come on here and say a whole bunch of stupid things that we shouldn't, um, we would most likely be kicked off this platform, right? So these platforms
Yeah.
already have these regulations that they're against any sort of ludicrous things that may go on the internet, but they want to control even beyond that what is said on the internet. And so because the CBC has already been pretty much corrupted, like, and a lot of other stuff, they actually give hundreds of millions of dollars to newspapers already. So it's a really sketchy thing. And also there's others.
So I'm curious about talking about, what the specific piece of what you just said there, talking about how speech is regulated. Because I watched, and this is how kind of lame I am, I guess, but I watched the entire hearing with Dr. Peterson at the at Parliament where they were talking about like these specific pronouns. And I watched the entire thing. It was like I think he was given an hour or something, and one thing that I'm kind of just interested in is like, I think that Dr. Peterson has a point. Okay. And I think that the point is very often lost. Like, so many people seem to think that this guy is like a transphobe or something like that. And I don't think that he is. I just think that he has a valid point. When you mandate something by law, then you're setting a precedent. And after you've set that precedent, people can then use that precedent to further create laws in that same scope. And I think that that's what his concern is saying that if you are mandating by law that someone uses like a specific speech for pronouns, then people can say, well, upon this precedent, you have to also say X, Y, and Z that may not relate to specifically pronouns. And it's kind of a way of getting a foothold in. I mean, what are your thoughts on that? Are you still there? I'm not able to hear you. Can you try to disconnect and reconnect? Well, shoot. I'm going to message him on Facebook here. I don't know why Discord has so many dang problems. It must be just on the mobile version. I'm not sure. Let's just disconnect him. There we go. Hello, can you hear me?
Hello.
Yeah, if that happens again where I like cut out or something, just disconnect and reconnect in general, and I'll just drag you up to that podcast interview channel. But this is something that
I thought you shut me off because I was rambling.
No. Discord does this sometimes, and I don't really know why, but that's all I've known to do to fix the problem. But I'll drag us back up in that channel in just a second. Okay, so I don't know what was the last thing you heard from me?
No, I don't know.
So I guess what I was saying earlier is that I actually watched that entire hour hearing, or the hour-long hearing with Dr. Peterson regarding the laws and, the mandated pronoun use.
Oh, in Canada, yeah.
So I guess what I was trying to explain there, and I'm probably going to have to edit this so I'm not like explaining it a second time, because I actually got through the whole explanation. But anyhow, what I was explaining is I think that Dr. Peterson has a good point there. And the reason that I think that is because, like, many people see what he was talking about is kind of like a transphobia or something like that. And that's not really the case. And I don't think personally that Dr. Peterson is a transphobe specifically. I think he has strong opinions on that, but that doesn't make him a transphobe. But what I'll say is that the point that he has is like,
he actually was up there with a person who was I think he was up there with sexual as well, so it wasn't just him that was up there.
Yeah, and I think that the point, and he explains it more in more lengthy detail, but just kind of like to get to the point, is like, if you pass laws like that, then it then sets a precedent. And then once you set that precedent, people can use that to kind of like continue making more laws along that path. And I think what he's saying is like, hey, this is a dangerous path to go down, because if they're going to mandate, and it is kind of a slippery slope argument in a way, but I think that there's enough examples in history, in laws specifically, and I don't know about Canada specifically on whether you guys have had this problem, but in the US, there definitely is a case where if there's this precedent set, then they can use that as well. If we're mandating that people have to say pronouns, then I want to also mandate X, Y, and Z based on that precedent.
Oh, and it's and the compelled speech argument is a really good one. And it's, well, of course, it's I have to say this, I have to say that, which wouldn't be so much trouble if it was actually an identifiable group or something like that. But there's this I don't know if you've noticed, there's been a bit of mission creep on that end. And so I don't know if you've seen the New York Times article on neopronouns. No, it's New York Times, so I don't think it's trolling, but they're talking about tree self and all sorts of other interesting stuff. And so,
and that's
if you're
where
going to compel people,
sorry to cut you off there. That's one thing that is so confusing to me is like, can people just anybody can arbitrarily, and this is where the conservatives kind of like get confused in the United States specifically. And it's a fair reason to be confused. Is like, who's making up these?
Sorry to cut you off, but here's the thing: there's rational sexual orientations, and then there's other stuff that I'm not so sure. But you can be gay, you can be straight, you can be bi, right?
Yeah.
And after that, it kind of gets murky for me. Sorry.
Yeah, and I don't think that you have to be sorry on that. I understand when I look down the pronoun list, some of them are like, okay, that makes total sense to me, and I have no problem whatsoever with it. And even the other ones that I don't understand, it's not that I really have a problem with it. It's just like, how are you supposed to keep all this stuff straight? And how much of this is just, this is some arbitrary, kind of wishy-washy thing that I'm saying that I am, rather than it, having any real factual basis. I mean, how do you lie down the facts when it comes to somebody's gender? There's got to be like some sort of training wheels here, or not even training wheels, but just there has to be a lane that they have to stay in. Like, I can't just you know what I mean? Like, there has to be some limitation that we're putting in there.
I don't know.
Because otherwise, I mean, the sky's the limit. And I mean, you could do that with anything. Like, and I think that this is a valid example. Like, on my wall, I have a painting. And I mean, if I start really blurring the lines and trying to assign other definitions to, like, if a painting was to have a feeling, I was like, what does that painting feel like it is? Well, then that's a subjective statement. And I can get that, but like, it has to be within reason. Like, you can't have a painting that feels like a flower. And that's, where I think United States conservatives kind of go off the rails in absurdity, is like, nobody, I don't think, is identifying as the quote unquote Apache attack helicopter or whatever. That seems a little bit absurd, but I can take the point that
was the whole point of that statement.
But it's like tree self. What the fuck is that? Like, I have to look it up. What is tree self?
It's you identify as a tree, apparently. And see, that's not a rational.
That's not even anything to do with sexuality.
No. Do you think you're a tree, apparently? I don't know.
I don't know if that one's true. I'm not seeing it here.
Well, you look up neopronouns. Now, I don't know whether
N-E-O?
it's just. Pardon?
Did you say N-E-O? Neo?
Neo, yes, N-E-O.
Okay.
So it isn't like neo-Marxism or neo-fascism or neo-whatever. Neo, and then pronouns, pronouns.
Yeah, this
And
is New York
there's,
Times. Oh shoot, I don't subscribe to them.
yeah, print self. It's behind a paywall, but just the headline alone should. I don't know. That's the thing. Like, should I pay $7 to see whether or not they're actually full of shit? Like it's just the
Yeah.
headline alone, and this is supposed to be sociology or some sort of basis, and it's like, okay, that's great. You think of your self as print self, and that might work great when you're a kid, but you get out into the real world, and people are going to be like, I don't want to call you 50 different pronouns.
Yeah. I am just kind of what? I don't really even understand
Yeah,
what this stuff
that's what I
is.
said.
So
I'm
Faye.
fine with. You know what though? I'm fine. I'm even fine with trans people. I don't really give a shit. Right? It's not a big deal for me. But when it starts getting weird and complicated and it doesn't make any sense anymore, it's maybe people should take a step back. And, like, okay, where are we going with this?
So this one here specifically, and this is on LGBTAwikia.org. And Fae, Fae, is a pronoun that's being, I guess, used in it at the top here. Let's see.
Okay.
Just make sure. Neopronouns are any set of singular third person pronouns that are not officially recognized in the language they are used in. Okay. So they're
But that's only one language. That's our language.
so typically created with the intent of being a
Like
gender
English.
neutral pronoun set. In English and many other Indo-European languages, third person pronouns can be gendered. In English, she, her is often used by women, he, him most often by men, and they, them by non-binary people though some people deviate from this convention. Some people prefer using neopronouns as an alternative gender neutral pronoun set. This can be because they
Yeah.
want to avoid singular they being confused with plural they, because neopronouns express something about them or their gender, like xenogenders, whatever that is. I'm not going to go down the rabbit hole and look that up, or because they feel more comfortable using neopronouns over any of the standard pronoun options. I'm just going to say, I mean,
Yeah.
this is
This
so
is the
let's
kind of digging I do through the internet every single day.
so
And
the
it's always a delightful ride of absurdity.
so I'm just going to say, well,
I'm not sure if
let's
you've ever
walk
heard of
through
Douglas
Fae.
Adams.
Let's walk through Fae real quick. So FAE, the Fae pronouns are a pagan-themed set of neopronouns created by Tumblr user, like they know the user that first said this. User Shadaris in 2013, and they actually have a. Uh, oh, anyway, they have a link to it. That's funny, but anyway, though it may have been created independently by someone else earlier, it is one of the most commonly used noun self pronoun sets. It likely inspired the trend of using noun self pronouns on the internet. A similar fairy themed pronoun set is fae, phase, or fae self. This may have been created independently, and this is where I'm saying is like, if somebody wants to use that, okay, I'm not gonna, tell them that we should. I don't think anybody should be telling them they can't do
Imagine
that.
saying the wrong words, and then you're dragged in front of a human rights court, and you're sued for
But
thousands of dollars, and because you weren't able to recognize their face self, you now owe the money, or you may have some sort of criminal record, or and just because you're like me and you're bad with fucking names.
and for me, I guess, while I think a lot of these are kind of a bit ridiculous, like I'm just gonna say it, like, sorry,
Well, I'm sure most of it's just sensationalism, and then if any of it really moves forward, a lot of it's just die off because it just seems either sensationalistic or flights of fantasy or
Yeah.
romanticism.
And so that's what I'm going to say is like, if somebody was like, if I go up to them and refer to them as they, and they say, please refer to me as this Thon, Thon. It's like, okay, I guess for this short interaction, I'll refer to you as Thon, but that doesn't mean I need to hang around the person either. If it's going to be like
No.
something like that, it's like, okay, this is
Have you seen
getting
any
kind
of the
of
stuff
on the
on?
side of ridiculous, and I just don't really want to be in conversation
No.
personally. I mean,
Have you seen any of the stuff on compelled? What is it? It's compelled. Oh, it was on the CBC. Something, I think there's something about it on the CBC that somebody would mention, but it was about compelled sexuality. So it was, or not, I don't know, but it was essentially saying that. But this is it. Have you heard the super straight thing? If we're gonna discuss this stuff,
the super
but it
straight
was,
thing.
yeah, you familiar with that? It's a
No.
meme. It's essentially it's people who are attracted to people who are born the opposite sex.
Okay.
So straight people, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was the idea, and it was some kid came up with it. It was a meme and everything else, but it was because there was this thing that was going on Twitter, or I'm not even sure. He was a young fella, so maybe they might even have been trying to tell him that shit in school, but they said, well, if a man identifies as a woman, then he's a woman. And if you're attracted to women, then you should be attracted to him or her now, right? And it
Yeah.
was just a simple thing of, well, no, and everything else like that, because it's, it's not only are there morphological differences between men and women, but it's also
So I guess
children and
technically I would be super straight because it says it's a term coined by TikTok user Kyler Royce to describe a type of
yeah.
heterosexual person that only dates cisgender members of the opposite sex. So I guess that would make me
What
super
you think
straight.
would be a totally acceptable sexuality.
That just,
It is
I
a
don't
troll, but
understand
it's
why that's super straight. That's just straight. Why do we have to put
yeah,
super in front of it?
because if you're not super straight, you're not a member of the LGBTQ plus SA community.
Oh, okay. I mean, I don't know
So
how that disqualifies me. I thought that their community
because
was.
it makes you the other.
Well, I get what you're saying there, but I'm saying like, from my understanding, LGBTQ plus is their main job is just, or the thing they're trying to achieve is just equality of rights for those that are, like lesbian, gay, bi, trans,
Well,
queer.
that was the thing in the 90s was just was the same thing with feminism back in the day. Was it was just we just want to be treated. We want to be on an even playing field, and not only that, but along with the even playing field means that there should be some penalty under law if you hire somebody who's a woman or who's part of a separate ethnic group and you deliberately do anything mean shit or horrible shit to them, which, yeah, fucking right, sue them, or any sort of discrimination and stuff like that. Like it basically says that if you're running a meritocracy and a woman's doing a better job than a man and she's getting paid much less, then you're fucked and she can. And yeah, why not? Like fucking, that's how it should be.
Yeah.
So I don't know where I was going with that, but
I just don't. Yeah. I mean, being quote unquote super straight, or I think I'm just going to completely take that term out of my vocabulary. Just being straight I mean, the other
Yeah.
word isn't needed. That's always what it's been. Straight. You date people who are cisgender of the opposite. Yeah, but anyway, the point being is like, how does that
No, no, man.
disqualify? I can still advocate for the rights of LGBTQ plus people and still be straight. That doesn't mean that I'm against them in any way.
Yeah.
But
No, it's actually the best anecdote I ever heard about, or the best anecdote I can give you about that sort of thing was when we legalized gay marriage in Canada. Maybe it must have been around maybe a decade ago or a little more or less. I'm not 100% sure, but when it happened, I was on a job site with a bunch of concrete guys, and there was a really old guy on the crew, and he hated everybody. He was, miserable. And
yeah,
when somebody started asking questions about it, the first thing he said, and he's very true, was, "If they want to get divorced, all the power to them." And it's the exact same thing. It's just, you want equal rights, and equal rights are great, but it's with equal rights, you get all the same responsibilities as everybody else, which is all I want for anyone.
yeah.
So it's one of those things, and yeah. So, but whatever. Like, the gay men probably already got divorced before that. So
Yeah, it just wasn't
yeah,
recognized legally, is the difference.
yeah,
Which I guess
yeah.
I think that's kind of a problem
Some legal
because,
accountability, at least.
yeah. And like I said, when it comes to the actual rights themselves, like actual rights, not like
They're
these kind of made up,
inalienable for all individuals. So all
yeah.
the individuals that have the same right.
Yeah, so in on that regard, I have absolutely no problem. And in fact, I recently had a conversation with somebody who was transgender about this issue, and they were totally like, we agreed on every single point that either of us made. So I think that there are rational people out in the community. I just think that there's also a very loud um, section of that community that is, in my opinion, a bit irrational. I mean, they just, hey, I mean, we can talk and I can entertain the concept of neo pronouns, but I'm also going to say that I have the opinion that that's kind of, you know, not overly valuable. I mean, like I said, if somebody comes up and says, would you please prefer or, refer to me as Z or Zer, I mean, I suppose I'm not going to turn it down. I'm not going to be a complete
Would
and
you
utter
refer to me as a
asshole.
tree?
And I mean, if you really feel strongly about that, I suppose, but I don't think that I want to. I'm probably what's going to end up happening is I'm going to tailor my speech and talking to that individual to then just not ever include that pronoun if possible, or any pronoun if possible. I'll just literally refer to them as individual or person. Are they claiming that they're not even a person? Like, I'm just saying, like,
I'll just
it
name.
doesn't make any sense for me to catalog.
English is so great. You could just refer to someone as their name and just work your way around in the conversations just around their name, and you can
Sure,
never have to actually refer to them as he or she,
right.
because apparently in the 7th or 8th century, a bunch of Normans showed up and butchered a bunch of people, took over, and just didn't bother learning the language properly. Something like that.
Yeah, and it makes sense. And I don't, for anybody that is going to be listening to this, I don't want this to be taken as, um, once again, I'm not like taking a belligerent stance where I refuse to say such and such. That's not really what it is. I'm just saying that there's got to
My
be.
daughter won't date no chocolate lab.
Yeah, it's nothing like
Yeah.
that, but it's just, hey, you know, uh, I guess this would be using a pronoun. Hey, group of individuals, is there a better way to achieve what you're going for here? Like, this doesn't seem like the best way to achieve that. I think that all this is really going to do, and it almost seems like a troll to me, I mean, I know that this is really, really important to a lot of people, but when I see something like this, I'm kind of raising an
Well, you
eyebrow.
could
Like, is
have,
this website for real right now? Like, is somebody
yeah.
really going to seriously come up to me and say they want to be referred to as Fey Self? Like, okay, I mean, I'll refer to you, I guess,
What
as
is
Fey
face self
Self.
again? Like did you know? And that's the thing too. Is like, what is
What is
face
it?
self?
Yeah, exactly. What is it? And how does it? So they're just saying that non-gender specific. It's a non-gender specific pronoun, but I'm just saying that there are
Oh,
already
it?
non-gender specific
That's
pronouns.
horrible.
So why do we have to create a completely separate non-gender specific pronoun because you don't like it? It's like, well, that's you could probably, like, how tiresome would it get? I'm just thinking from my perspective, like if I was in this position where I'm like, you know what, I'm trying to put myself in the person's shoes here. It's like I have transitioned to now be female or a woman, you know, and I am not interested in being called they or them. So then I'm asking everyone else because I don't personally like a completely legitimate pronoun that doesn't put anything whatsoever upon like the sexuality of the person. Like it's just calling them like individual. Sorry, like once again, they're kind of asking way too much here. It's like, okay, society, just because you have
Well,
a
you're talking
feeling.
about non-binary people and stuff like that.
Well, I'm just
And
saying, go ahead. Sorry.
I actually looked up face self, and okay, did Reddit, of course, but it's okay. To quote the redditor, Faye says, I'm trying out some new pronouns.
I'm
Faye,
just trying them out.
I've always liked them and really want to see how they feel hearing them. Okay, unquote. But okay, so now sexuality was always considered something intrinsic. That it was literally the roll of the cosmic dice, and when you were born, you were a boy or a girl.
And nobody's arguing that.
And now there were some assumed roles that we've of course come to the point where we're like, okay, yeah, no, women can do shit too. So, you at least gotten to that point in our civilization where it's, we stopped oppressing women,
Yeah.
stopped doing horrible things to gay people. Anyway, blah blah blah.
Yes.
But this sounds more like somebody who's going for a test drive in a new car.
Yeah, and I think who was that there was a feminist writer. I can't remember what her name was. She teaches at a college, and I
Well, a lot of
remember.
feminists are not happy about this stuff, man.
Well, they're upset because like the one lady said, if
They're trying
you
to
want
raise
to
women.
feel validated, then write a friggin' book. And like I'm just saying that is kind of a stuck up douchey way to say it, but like it has some truth to it, because women's suffrage, they had to really actually, fight pretty hard for that. And there was a good reason for it. And I mean, the reason that we can
Oh,
say that now, that there's a
to
good
be able to
reason for it.
vote,
Well, I'm just saying,
even or before that, like you could literally go to the court or whoever and say my wife is crazy, and they throw her in a mental institution.
yeah. I just
Oh,
think
my
that,
wife's crazy.
yeah, I mean,
No.
I didn't even, so my buddy Jesse and I talked about the pronouns thing and just the regular set of pronouns that are pretty widely, I would say, a lot of them accepted. Um, a lot of those, I mean, there's a number of them that are a bit wacky, in my opinion. I mean, it explains something, and I think there's multiples of the pronouns that are just kind of like a catch-all. Like, I don't know what the hell I am, but I'm not male and I'm not female, and I'm not any of these other pronouns. There's even a pronoun for that. And it's like,
So why wouldn't you just say, okay, well, because I'm not sure, just just tell everybody just to call you by your name. Jamie this, Jamie that, Bob this, Bob that, Jim
Yeah.
this, Jim that. English has accommodation for that. At least if you have,
Yeah, and I mean, hey, it's one of
even if you were
those.
to refer to a group of people who contain that single person, you could say Jim and the rest of everyone. If they wanted you to be that anal about it, but
I just think that there's a hyper focus on this that, hey, I mean, maybe, some people would say, oh, well, you're speaking from privilege because you're, cisgender white guy, white male, straight. And it's like, okay, but I don't know that even when I was younger that I paid that close of attention specifically to my gender roles or whatever. Like, I guess some of that might have been kind of forced upon me by my parents, but I don't think that it was like yeah, I mean, especially in the case where I'm like, not even the case where I necessarily had the feelings to really question that. Like, I just kept going. That's how I normally feel. And, I'm attracted to women or whatever. It's just weird for me, even when, other cisgender males make it a big deal to be kind of like this big old macho thing. I mean, it's funny to kind of
uh,
joke about, but it's like for one to hyper focus upon their sexuality is just odd to me in
okay.
general. I mean, that's just my personal opinion. I
You,
think
you
it's
may have,
odd.
yeah, you may have heard this or not, but okay. So the whole idea behind what you just described, at least from um, the guys who are see it as an issue, I mean, the people who see this as an issue, what they see is you're actually just acting out a gender role that you were socially engineered into um, playing, right? So essentially, the whole world is a stage, and
Yeah.
for thousands of years, this patriarchy, or God knows what it has pushed you to be X kind of personality, and has pushed women and other people to be Y kinds of person or whatever, and that's so. The way you're currently acclimatized isn't actually just a normal function of just being a dude, and is more a construct. Well, it's this deconstructed stuff, but it's more a construct. So you were actually just you know propagandized, whatever, by the patriarchy
Yeah,
or
from their
something. I don't know.
perspective, maybe, but I can, Dr.
Somebody with
Peterson's
half a
talked about
brain could
this
probably
too.
describe it way better.
No, I mean, Dr. Peterson's talked about it, and that's I wouldn't say that that's as valid an argument as what people make it out to be, just because, and I know that you're not making the argument, you're just playing devil's advocate, but
Yeah.
the thing that I'll say about that argument is that if you look at behavioral psychology, and once again, not an expert, I'm just going by what I've read and what I've been told, that it's in upwards of 85 to 90% of a person's being is set. It doesn't matter what cultural influences, it doesn't matter what their parents do or what. 85 to 90% of what that person's going to be, unless we're talking like a insane case, like a huge edge
It's
case,
all biology.
it's mostly biology. And this, I think, want to say, I heard it on Sam Harris's podcast. He was talking to some a behavioral psychologist, and he's a
Yeah, yeah.
neuroscientist. So, I mean, I would trust his
Well,
like
that's the thing, and
expertise on that.
it's if you talk to people, when they describe, like, if you talk to people who are gay, or you talk to people who are straight, you talk to people who are bi or whatever, and you ask them, okay, well, when did you first discover where you are, and where you are sexually, and that sort of thing. And it wasn't a choice.
Yeah.
It was almost just a roll of the cosmic dice, and they just happen to be X or Y, or and that's the thing, and it's
I just think the
but
laws are
whenever
too
you say the roll of
specific.
the cosmic dice, everybody gets uncomfortable because they think, well, wait, so most of this is indeterminate and just chaotic, and it's like, well, yeah.
I just think the laws are way too specific. I mean, I honestly, this is what I would prefer that the laws says, and it just says that a marriage is between two consenting individuals and have absolutely nothing to do with sex in the wording of it whatsoever. Just
Well,
two
that's what it's
fucking
like up here. It's been
individuals.
like that for years.
Yeah, I don't know why we ever had to have this, you know, specification of gender or sex, whichever one, in the law in the first place. It's not needed. I mean, I guess if you have kind of like older cultural issues, which the U.S. definitely has those.
Oh, the American Taliban.
Yeah, but anyway,
We have a Canadian Taliban.
let's try to shift gears. What do you think about the term cultural Marxism? Because Dr. Peterson has a lot to say about it.
It's depends, because if you look it up right now on Wikipedia, it actually says that it's got a whole lot to do with Yazidism and horrible evil people who do bad things. Now, before somebody got on there and redefined it, it was essentially the application of Marxist theory to culture.
Yeah.
So it created a class system and all the other things that might be associated with that. Like, oof. This is the thing. It actually was talking to some people. I'm not going to get into who I was talking to the other day, and I was like, you guys really have to see this for what it is, because cultural Marxism and intersectionality puts you guys, even though you're a very small minority, it will put you people at the very top of this hierarchy that they must destroy. And it's not because it's culture. It's because they take care of their kids. They have two parent families. They're really family oriented and all this other stuff. And these are the real signs that make success. And it's statistically, this is how it works. Sorry for ranting again.
That's fine. So I think that it's kind of I can under like I get where they're getting it from. Like they're talking about Karl Marx's Communist Manifesto, and it says like this in chapter 2 it says there's a page that talking about what we believe, and I get that, but I think that they're just using that term kind of as a scare tactic, and I don't think that that term is um, overly useful for. I just hear it a lot, so that's the only reason I I brought it up.
Well,
But
if you look at the theories underneath it, right? So you look at intersectionality and critical race theory and these other things. It almost mirrors the same way. Fuck, I don't know a lot about it, but the same way that the social Darwinists looked at it in the early 20th century, and so it's essentially you're creating a hierarchy based upon immutable attributes. So you're born into this, that, and the other thing, and the way it's similar to Marxism is that it assumes that people, well, whereas people of certain ethnicities uh, now assume the same sort of characteristics as those of the elite classes and whatever else like that. So they're essentially setting up certain ethnicities as the kulaks. But now you have a hierarchy of kulaks, right?
Yeah.
And it's and when you start getting into the other and start calling people the other and start saying, you know, these are the bad guys and these are the people, and you start really focusing on those groups, then it's, you know, it starts getting ugly. And oh my god, actually I won't even repeat the name of these guys on your podcast, but I dug into some extremist content the other day by accident, just because I saw a meme about it.
Yeah.
And they're a group in Colorado who were saying things about Anne Frank, and I was like, wow. And I got into that, and immediately I almost backed out because it was like the crazy anarchists that I walked away from years ago, because they were all crazy or hurting people.
Yeah. Yeah, that's crazy. I think that there's definitely a lot of identity politics going around that is
Oh, it's toxic.
just stirring up a lot of toxic stuff. Have you seen any of the stuff that's going on over in Germany right now? I mean, I can't even believe QAnon.
Not a lot of it. I know in France there were several letters from former generals and everything else like that to the French ministry or whatever, and to the French government, that basically warning about a civil war.
Wow.
I know in England that the Conservatives won a huge win, but otherwise I haven't paid much attention to Germany. I know Angela Merkel's failing horrifically, but she's been doing that for years. Maybe
Yeah.
that's just my perspective.
I don't know about how well she's doing
Yep.
specifically, but so I saw, I want to say it was maybe a special on Vice recently where essentially over in Germany, they have the same exact phenomena as we're having in the United States with like the QAnon and the conspiracy theories, except just in a different way, where they believe that it almost mirrors the same thing with Trump, but they believe that the last German, leader was essentially many, many, many years ago, and up to this point, the freedom of the true German people has been, taken away. And of course, this minority, they feel themselves as like true Germans, quote unquote, which the same
And
phenomena in the United
that's
States.
just identitarianism again.
Yeah. So the United States, all these people, they see themselves as patriots, right? So it's
Yeah.
all the same problem, but it's just people like these ideas are just very attractive to a certain subsection of society that just feels like they're oppressed or something. I haven't really quite figured out what the formula is there, but it's just interesting to see that pretty much almost an identical mirror. I mean, we're talking literally QAnon, like not a different conspiracy that's similar to QAnon in Germany. It's like literally the American conspiracy of QAnon has sparked them to do all of this.
You know, I had just had a bit of an epiphany talking to you, but maybe it's just because in life, it's a roll of the dice, right?
Yeah.
And most of us, we get an even roll, and so half of the time we're fucked over. And when you look around and you're constantly being fucked over for no reason, which is just the roll of the dice,
Yeah.
I can see that kind of this animosity. Like maybe the roll of the dice isn't the problem; it's something else.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I've got into that mindset a few
Every
times.
time my paycheck comes in and a third of it's gone in taxes and other shit, I'm like, I got fucked over. And it's not because it's a bad thing. Like I have all these great services and all this other shit, and I have the RSPs or 401ks, you call them, or whatever, and all this other stuff coming off my check. So it's good at the end of the day, but every time I look at it, I'm like, I'm getting fucked over.
Yeah. But I could definitely see
So
that.
maybe that's just a generalized feeling, right?
Yeah, and I mean, so one last thing I wanted to, or a subject I was kind of curious to talk about.
Yeah.
How is the house? I guess how is the housing situation and rent and like how does that generally work over in Canada?
Oh man. Um, that's oh wow. Oh, okay. So recently, my government signed the UN Compact on Migration, and so we've increased because mass migration in Europe has started begun to come under a pause.
Yeah.
Uh, it's increased here, and they're trying to increase it here. And I know a lot of people from all across the world who are really cool, right? So let's get that out of the way. But so what's happening is just that they're bringing in a very large volume of people, and so because houses just don't spring up overnight, we're experiencing housing shortages all across the country. And because of our failed vaccine rollout and everything else like that, a lot of those guys, and like, dude, every fucking guy I know who gets off a plane and that I've met, first two things he wants is a place to live and a job.
Yeah.
And we're no longer able to provide that. And so it's starting to get sketchy, and you know what I mean? And it's so it's vacancy rates have plummeted because the houses just aren't being built. And it's not because there's no impetus to build the houses. It's just because you can only, it's just like anything else, any other rational idea, like you can only put in so much before, like any sort of other engineered thing, you can only put in so much volume at a time, and you have to adjust for that volume and blah blah blah.
Right.
And there wasn't a whole lot of, it was more ideologically driven than it was rationally driven. So even though they wanted to help people, they pushed too hard. So it's very expensive here right now for rental housing. And like housing prices have gone up like 25% in the past year in a lot of markets.
Jeez.
So it's crazy because they're also allowing a lot of foreign money to come in. And that's one of the reasons why you can't buy houses in some other parts of the world, is because they know that if you bring in all this foreign investment, you'll destroy the housing market. It's just like China. Like they have whole towers full of fucking houses that nobody lives in because nobody can afford. So
Yeah, I feel like
like that's
the housing problem in general, and I was just curious how it was over there. We have, I don't know that it's necessarily an immigration problem, but like in this area, I mean, the housing is absurd. I mean, it's nowhere near what it is in like say San Francisco or probably New York or even Chicago,
no, it's ludicrous there.
but I'm just saying that very often, like I have recently been looking, houses in the market in my area, and it's like you go over and you find a house for 150,000 US dollars. It's typically in this area like outdated, or it's a house that you're having to essentially kind of make sacrifices because it's got like
That
old
was a complaint I actually
appliances
read
or
about. That was a complaint I actually read about in the paper today about here, was that they said that if you wanted to get a house for a decent price on the market right now, you're immediately going to have to face several $1,000s in repairs.
yeah. And it's not, I guess, probably as common as it is up there. It sounds like your situations is a little bit, or probably quite a bit more dire than what ours is. But I was thinking
Well, it
about
gets down to
this.
-30. Like, your house has to be, like, you can't have gigantic fucking holes in it. I don't know where you live. It's probably similar, but it can get fucking cold up here, and if your furnace goes out, it can get dangerous.
Yeah, I'd say it's probably more dangerous there. I mean, I'm in Illinois, so I mean, it does get cold here, but it's only for, I think, less time. I don't know. I guess you're really far East Coast. Does it snow probably more there than it does towards Central?
It's well, I'm on an island off the coast of New Brunswick. So it's we're really dependent upon the Atlantic.
Sure.
And last winter wasn't so bad, but maybe every 10 years or so they get 15 feet or so of snow just an overnight.
Wow. Yeah, it's
Hasn't
not.
happened to me yet. But,
Yeah,
we're not Colorado either.
But I guess what I'm getting at is the additional problem is that there's quite a large portion of the population that can't afford to actually buy a house. Like they either don't have the credit, or they didn't go. Like I'm fortunate because I'm able to get a Department of Veterans Affairs loan or a VA loan for my property, which means I can essentially get a property and put zero down, and I'm guaranteed a specific interest rate based on what the VA guidelines are. A lot of people don't have that luxury. Like you got to put in, 20+% of the property value down as down payment in order to even, get a conventional loan in a lot of cases. So the thing that I'm seeing is that a lot of landlords even they will be essentially people that have the capital to just buy out these houses, or maybe the first one that they do they have a loan out on. I don't know, but the point is they'll come in, they'll take a house that say has 5 or 6 bedrooms in it, like a big house, a 2-story house or whatever, and they'll get rid of
a bunch of bedrooms.
They'll turn it into not that, but they'll turn it into like a duplex, and upstairs, downstairs. And then, in order for them to do that, of course, either they're doing the work themselves, which some of them do that, but in a lot of cases, they'll have a contractor do it. Well, the contractors are in the same situation where it's like you might be 2-3 weeks, a month, maybe 2 months down the road, depending on the season, to get a contractor even in to do that work. So you're just sitting on the property. And then on top of that, it's like now you're moving somebody into a property that was built in the early 1900s. Isn't modernized. Like this property that I'm in right now, it has heat, but it doesn't have air conditioning. It has just like a window. Walls? No, it actually, I think it
actual drywall.
I think that it's drywall in here. I might. Yeah, it doesn't. It doesn't look like
plaster lath has a different feel, and even if you knock on it with your fingers, you can feel the difference because plaster lath is literally it's a whole bunch of boards, and they like almost pressed like fucking drywall mud on there.
Yeah, I don't think this is lath and plaster in here, but it's a bit older. I mean, I would say that this was changed out in the 90s probably, so it's 30 years or so since this drywall's been put in here. But the point is like a lot of these bigger houses don't have air, like central air to the upstairs, and a landlord isn't going to put it up there. Oh yeah, it's inefficient as hell. I mean, keep adding on all these things. Like a landlord isn't going to make the property efficient because they don't give a crap. They're just trying to milk somebody for their money, which gives me to the even further part. So like landlords will often complain. It's like, oh, well, I have to go get this contractor, spend money on the contractor, not be renting it out while all this is happening. Then they also have an increased insurance cost on the property. So like typically per year or per 6 months or so. I mean,
it's funny you wanted to make this final conversation because holy fuck, man, I worked for landlords for a few times, and it was a curb value. It's really just curb value. It if it looks good, that's really all it is. And you spend the absolute minimum you possibly can on a property, and it's not because, well, a lot of guys are scummy. Well, a few guys are scummy, but a lot of it is just because there's so much overhead to doing it.
Well, yeah, and that's what I'm trying to get at is like this is a situation in my personal opinion, I think that it should be really truthfully handled at least in some way by the government. Whether they have full control or not, that is probably a more complex question for today, but I think that for what the problem is and what the core problem is like the landlords are just trying to take an advantage to a way of making money. And to me, this shouldn't be seen like somebody's housing isn't something that people should be profiting on. Like I don't think that this is like a case where we should be like that to me
I think
seems
you
like
should be able to
immoral.
profit on housing, but it should be within a rational framework.
Well, yeah, and that's
It
where I'm
shouldn't
saying is
be.
like maybe there should be regulation of the insurance companies to try to lower that. Maybe there should. I'm just saying like they may not need to hamper down specifically on the landlords because they're really kind of just in a lot of cases, probably most of the cases. I'll give the benefit of the doubt here. People are just trying to make maybe a little bit more than what they're spending per month on the property. You know, just as kind of like to cover
Yeah,
some overhead or whatever. But
you know,
I don't think that severely
and
profiting
many of
off
them
of a
may not have the
property.
trade skills to improve the properties, or even like I
The
just mentioned
desire.
cold spots.
They don't
And
even
you know
have the
what cold spots
desire.
are, and I know what cold spots are, but do they know what cold spots are? Do they know that there might be issues with it, like the foundation or insulation or all that other stuff? Plus, once you start pulling off the walls off of like grandfathered properties, God fucking knows what's in there that you have to start fixing because now you pulled the wall off, so it's a
Yeah.
fucking mess.
And I'm just saying that so the major complaints for these landlords, it is, I suppose, a valid complaint, but I'm just saying that landlords shouldn't be the ones handling this by
Proactively
themselves.
trying to fix up the properties.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that this is something like, for example, in Switzerland, there is money like that is just specifically out of taxes in which everybody pays into, and there's a fund for just fixing up every single property in the literal country. Like they hardly ever will tear a property
That's
down.
not such a bad idea,
And I'm just saying
but
that
you know,
that would fix a
I
lot of
mean,
the issues and make it so that people can charge rent that's within a reasonable amount. Like right now, the justification is, well, I spent all this overhead money to fix the place. I have to pay higher insurance costs and I'm trying to profit. It's like, well, really, it's in the best interest of all of the area to have at least some acceptable level of, I guess, housing to live in. And if landlords are, understandably not able to meet that demand, then I really feel like it is a right to have a place to stay. I mean, I think that it's a pretty unpopular opinion in the United States, but I don't think it should be. I mean, I really feel like if you house people, um, you're once again, that payback pays for itself. You're not going to have people out on the streets. You're not going to have people doing these illicit drugs and all this other stuff and everything that
oh,
plays into the homelessness problem, and
depends on the population.
sure.
They have large homeless shelters in Edmonton, and when I was out on the streets and stuff, they said basically like there's certain. It was like a 4th floor. It was like a gigantic hotel, homeless hotel kind of thing.
Yeah.
At least the way it was explained to me. And essentially, gangs controlled like a floor or two.
Jeez.
So it didn't work out so well for a lot of homeless people.
Sure. I just think that there's more that could be done. And I feel like right now it's just kind of like a hands off approach. Like, let's just let the free market handle it. And quite frankly, the free market is doing pretty shitty in that regard. Like, there's no reason why, for example, the place that I'm staying in, I should have to pay $800 a month. And I mean, we're talking it's like 1,000 square foot or maybe less. There's no reason why I should be spending $800 a month for rent plus utilities. I mean, no, I have to pay utilities on top of that when it's like, what is the mortgage on this place? I could probably even look it up. Let me look this up real quick. How
Yeah,
much was it previously
that's
sold
ugly.
for?
And
You know?
you probably don't have the same controls. Like where I live, we have rent controls, but there's also the thankfully they didn't they the hydro I was gonna say hydro the electric bills and stuff like that here, they're also semi-socialized, so they're all under government regulation too. So they've tried to keep things not ridiculous, but I've seen a $15 rise. They instituted a carbon tax here, and it was less about actually stopping carbon and more about just having more money to spend. So I've seen a $15 raise in that, but my rental fees and stuff haven't really gone up that much because there's a cap on what they can raise every year. But there's been quite a few. It might be a problem where you live too, where if there is even a regulation, there's renovations. So they kick everyone out to do renovations and then they charge more money on the property.
Yeah, that's I've seen that happen. So they're paying it, it's likely actually, and it's likely they just paid just outright for this house. But that being said, even if they had a mortgage on this house, which is like I said unlikely, they probably just paid outright for it because it's only worth 120 grand, and I just think they probably just paid for it. But that being said, a mortgage on average is around $720 a month. So that means me just by myself in the downstairs portion of this duplex, which I'm moving out here soon.
Holy shit.
I'm in the process of moving into my own house, but they're already paying for it. They're making $80 just even if they were paying a mortgage, but they're probably not. They probably just only have to pay the yearly taxes, and they paid for it outright. And let's see what the taxes are. So $3,500 a year. $3,500 a year. So I mean, they're making literal hand over fucking
in
fist.
Calgary. Get this, Calgary, Alberta. There's guys who they'll buy a house, and then because the housing market was so fucked there and still is, that they can just rent out rooms. And there's a lot of traveling tradesmen and everything else like that want a room. So you can get a house with 6 rooms in it and 2 kitchens, and you can charge $600 a room. So you're making $3,600. You're making almost 40-50 grand a year on every one of these houses.
Jeez.
Right. So just do the math. I know guys that had duplexes, and they purchased duplexes, and there were 8 rooms in the duplex, and it was $600 a room.
Wow.
So 6 times 8, 6 times 36. So add 12, so 48,000. So he was making 196 or 96,000 a year on this property.
He literally doesn't have to work.
I don't think he was paying that much. Pardon?
Probably doesn't even have to work.
No, he didn't. No, he didn't. He was just he was making, it was 100,000 a year, 100,000 a year on the property, and he's probably paying God knows how much in property taxes and stuff, and then utilities on top of that, plus free coffee and free this and free that. So it's obvious that there was extra money there.
Sure. All right. Well, yeah, I'm glad we touched that subject because it's kind of a gripe.
Income properties are good money, but it's one of those things too where.
At what cost?
Well, you might be having the same problem that we're having up here, is where you have speculators and people from outside what you would normally expect as the market coming in and just purchasing up stuff, whether they're large financial firms that are hiding behind small LLCs or,
Yeah. Yeah. But
Like they fucked your housing market 10 years ago and bought up a whole bunch of property. So
yeah. But well, we've I guess talked about a bunch of various subjects. Do you have any final thoughts?
we didn't talk about video games,
What do you want to talk about on
but
video games?
maybe we'll talk again sometime or something.
Yeah, we'll have. In fact, I have a series that I want to get back to. That's like the state of gaming. So I think next time we talk, let's just specifically talk about the state of gaming. But,
Yeah, things have changed a lot,
for sure.
so that would be fun.
All right, Jamie. Well, I appreciate you coming on and I guess chit chatting for a while.
Yeah, well, it's the first time I've actually ever talked with anyone in this format, so it's a pretty big learning experience, and I should have really brought in a bullet head and tried to stay more on topic and shit like that. So
That's okay. I think it
sorry
was
for
still pretty
being not the
interesting.
best podcast, but it's the first time I've ever done it. So.
I think it was still pretty interesting, and I
Me too.
appreciate you having or coming on, and I think we'll try to have you on again. But I'm going to go ahead and switch to the audience real quick. So if this is content that you like, please hit the subscribe button on YouTube, and please like my page on Facebook called The Smoogley. And as always, thanks for listening. Bye.
Have a good night.